Commander Jake Mitchell stood before the Galactic Council with humanity's final warning. But they laughed. 27 civilizations, 3,000 years of history, and not one believed Earth could enforce its terms. In 72 hours, they'd learn the difference between mercy and weakness. If you want to see what happens when humanity stops asking nicely, hit that like button and subscribe to HFY Core, because you won't believe what comes next. Let's dive into this trial of fire. The Council Chamber orbited Nexus Prime, a neutral station built before humans left their solar system. Jake Mitchell had been standing at the speaker's podium for 6 minutes, and every second felt like swallowing glass. Around him, holographic representatives from 24 species flickered in their designated spaces, some towering, some floating, all dismissive. "Let me be clear," Jake said, keeping his voice level. "The Calroth sovereignty has 72 hours to withdraw from the Epsilon colonies. All civilian captives must be returned unharmed. All military vessels must retreat beyond the buffer zone established in the Treaty of New Geneva." A ripple of clicking sounds came from the insectoid Vryn delegation. Their translator rendered it as laughter. Ambassador Thelnara of the Calroth leaned forward, her 4 eyes glowing with bioluminescent contempt. She was tall, even by her species standards, with deep blue skin that pulsed with patterns when she was amused. Right now, those patterns were dancing. "Commander Mitchell," she said, her voice carrying the flat precision of someone speaking a learned language, "your demand is noted. The Epsilon sector was contested territory long before humanity stumbled into it. You have 12 colony ships and a single battle group. We have an armada." Jake didn't blink. "The terms are recorded and transmitted across all official channels. 72 hours. "Or what?" This came from General Cross of the Hegemony, a massive reptilian whose scales gleamed under the station lights. "You'll file another complaint? Humans are children playing at diplomacy." Jake reached into his jacket and pulled out a data crystal, placing it on the podium. The holographic display expanded it for everyone to see. "This contains our contingency protocols. Authorized by Earth Command, approved by the Colonial Assembly, and certified under Article 9 of the Galactic Compact. If our terms aren't met, we will enforce them. This isn't a threat. It's a legal notification." Thelnara's patterns shifted to something like pity. "Legal. Your species joined the Council 40 years ago. You have no enforcement capability. Your fleets are adequate for pirates, not peer adversaries." "We're not looking for a war," Jake said quietly. "We're offering you a way to avoid one." The chamber erupted in sounds that didn't translate cleanly. Hisses, chirps, rumbling bass notes. The consensus was clear. Humanity was bluffing, and everyone knew it. The presiding arbiter, a crystalline being named Shard, raised one limb for silence. "The Calroth sovereignty's claim predates human settlement by 3 centuries. The Council recognizes their historical rights to the sector. Commander Mitchell, your objection is noted, but the decision stands. This session is adjourned." Jake stood there for 3 seconds longer than necessary. He wanted them to remember his face. Then he picked up the data crystal, turned, and walked toward the exit. Thelnara called after him, "Commander, I hope your superiors understand reality better than you do. The Epsilon colonists would fare better under Calroth protection than caught between us and your military posturing." Jake stopped at the doorway. He didn't turn around. "You have 72 hours, he said. "After that, every ship, station, and settlement will know you were warned." He left the chamber. The door sealed behind him with a pneumatic hiss. In the corridor, his aide, Lieutenant Sarah Chen, fell into step beside him. She was young, competent, and currently looked like she wanted to punch through a bulkhead. "Sir, they're not going to comply." "No," Jake agreed. "They're not." Then, what happens? Jake touched his wrist console. A secure channel opened, encrypted 12 ways, and routed through 4 relay stations. A single phrase appeared in text. Clearance granted. Protocol Omega active. We stop asking, Jake said. Sarah's face went pale. She'd read the contingency files. She knew what Omega meant. How many ships do we actually have out there, sir? Jake didn't answer. He was already thinking 3 moves ahead. Transport corridors, civilian evacuation zones, firing solutions that would leave historians arguing for centuries about whether humanity had shown mercy or ruthlessness. Behind them, through the sealed doors, the council continued its session, discussing trade routes and resource allocations. They had 71 hours and 54 minutes left. None of them were checking their sensors. None of them noticed the gravitational anomalies forming at the edge of the system. Distortions that looked like cosmic background radiation, unless you knew exactly what humanity's new jump drives left behind. By the time they figured it out, it would be far too late. The first attack came 18 hours after Jake's departure from Nexus Prime. It wasn't where anyone expected. The Calroth held the Epsilon colonies with a blockade of 40 warships, cruisers, destroyers, and 3 dreadnoughts that could level a moon. Their admiral, Vexthor, had been conducting what he called pacification operations, which meant rounding up colonists and shipping them to labor camps on Calroth border worlds. Vexthor was on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Mandate, when its sensor officer made a confused sound. Admiral, detecting multiple contacts. Range, I don't understand these readings. Clarify, Vexthor growled. His species communicated as much through pheromones as sound. But he learned to speak standard for command purposes. Contacts appearing at random intervals. No jump signatures. No approach vectors. They're just there. On the tactical display, red icons began populating. 1, 5, 20, 50. They formed a sphere around the Calroth blockade, each one at optimal firing distance. Identity? Vexthor demanded. Reading human transponders. But sir, that's impossible. Humanity doesn't have 50 capital ships. Our intelligence shows. The communications array lit up with an incoming broadcast. It cycled through every frequency, every protocol, ensuring no one could claim they didn't hear it. Jake Mitchell's voice filled every bridge in the system. This is Commander Jacob Mitchell of the Terran Defense Fleet. You have violated the terms presented to the Galactic Council. Your 72-hour deadline has been revised. You now have 30 minutes to begin withdrawing from Epsilon. All civilian captives must be transferred to the designated neutral zones. Any ship that fires on our forces or the colonists will be considered hostile. Vexthor's jaw plates clattered, the Calroth equivalent of laughter. Who does this human think? Sir, the sensor officer interrupted. Those contacts, they're not ships. What? They're weapons platforms, automated defense grids. I'm reading power signatures consistent with siege-class railguns. Vexthor zoomed the tactical view. Each red icon was now displaying specifications that made his thermal regulators spasm. Railguns that could punch through dreadnought armor. Point defense systems that could track 1,000 missiles simultaneously. And power plants that suggested they could maintain fire for hours. When did they deploy these? Vexthor whispered. His intelligence officer pulled up archives, fingers flying across controls. Sir, there are reports. 3 months ago. Automated freighters, flagged as mineral transport. They passed through this system. Dozens of them. You're saying they disguised siege platforms as cargo ships? Humans are excellent at deception, Admiral. The 30-minute counter appeared on every screen in the Calroth fleet. 29 minutes, 54 seconds. Vexthor opened a channel to his superiors on the Sovereignty homeworld. It would take 6 minutes for the message to reach them. 6 more for a response. He didn't have 12 minutes. Flagship to all vessels, battle stations, prepare to engage human platforms. Sir, his tactical officer said carefully, we're surrounded. If they all fire simultaneously, then we die with honor rather than submit to primates. The counter hit 28 minutes. Across the system, on the surface of Epsilon 3, Jake Mitchell stood in the command center of what looked like a mining outpost. The entire complex was a hardened military facility, built over 2 years under the cover of colonist infrastructure projects. Beside him, Felnara stood with her hands bound in ceremonial restraints. She'd been captured 6 hours earlier, when her diplomatic shuttle had been intercepted by what she'd thought was a human patrol vessel. Now she understood it had been deliberate, a witness held where she could see everything. You planned this, she said, her skin patterns flashing between confusion and respect. The council appearance, the deadline, all theater. No, Jake said, watching the tactical displays. The warning was real. We meant every word. Your leadership chose to ignore it. 50 platforms. You had 50 siege platforms pre-positioned. We had 112, Jake corrected. 50 are active, the rest are insurance. Felnara's patterns shifted to alarm. That's a siege capability that rivals the hegemony's entire mobile fleet. We're not at war with the hegemony. Yet. Jake didn't respond to that. He was watching the countdown, 26 minutes. On one screen, he could see live feeds from the civilian detention centers. Kalroth guards moving between barracks, unaware that in less than half an hour, their fleet might cease to exist. They won't surrender, Felnara said quietly. Vextor is from a warrior clan. He'll fight. I know. You'll kill thousands. I'll kill however many it takes to save the colonists. That's the job. Felnara studied him. Humans were difficult to read. No patterned skin, no scent communication, just subtle facial movements. But she was learning. You don't want this, she said. No one sane wants a war. But you'll do it anyway. Yes. The countdown hit 23 minutes. On another display, Jake saw movement in the Kalroth fleet. Ships adjusting position, weapons coming online. Sarah Chen approached, holding a datapad. Sir, we're getting scatter reports from the outer colonies. The hegemony is mobilizing observers. The Vrin have moved 3 battle groups to standby positions. Everyone wants to see if we're bluffing. Let them watch, Jake said. He opened a secure channel. All platforms, this is Mitchell. You are weapons free if the Kalroth open fire. Targeting priorities, weapons systems first, engines second. Leave life support intact. I want survivors, not martyrs. Acknowledgements came back in text. Automated systems didn't waste bandwidth on voice. 19 minutes. Vextor made his decision. All ships, launch missiles. Target the platforms. Overwhelming firepower. They can't track everything at once. The Crimson Mandate shuddered as its vertical launch systems spat out 60 missiles. Across the blockade, 39 other ships did the same. Over 2,000 missiles filled space, all converging on the human platforms. For 8 seconds, it looked like a conventional engagement. Then, the platforms opened fire. The railguns didn't sound like anything. Space doesn't carry sound. But their effect was visible, as hypervelocity projectiles tore through the missile swarm. Point defense lasers created a web of light, each beam tracking and destroying multiple targets. The missiles that survived the first wave hit kinetic barriers that humanity had borrowed from studying ancient hegemony wrecks. In 40 seconds, the entire missile barrage was neutralized. 0 platforms damaged. Jake watched the tactical display update in real time. He felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not relief. Just the weight of what came next. Commander, Sarah said, Calroth fleet is charging main weapons. Hoped against it, but expected it. He opened the broadcast channel again. Admiral Vexthor, stand down. You're out of position, out of options, and out of time. Withdraw now, and this ends peacefully. The response came in the form of particle beams, bright blue lances of energy that struck 3 platforms. The platform's shields held, absorbing megajoules of energy and dissipating it as heat. The Calroth had just fired first. Protocol Omega had a clause for that. Jake took a breath. All platforms, return fire, disable and board. I want prisoners and evidence, not corpses. The railgun spoke. The Crimson Mandate lost its main drive in the first 3 seconds. 14 other Calroth ships suffered the same fate. Precision shots that turned warships into drifting metal. The remaining ships tried to scatter, but the platforms had predicted every vector. Within 6 minutes, the Calroth blockade was combat ineffective. No ships destroyed. No critical casualties. But completely, utterly defeated. Jake didn't celebrate. He was already thinking about the next problem. Sarah, get rescue shuttles to those Calroth ships. Full medical teams. I want their crews treated well enough that they go home and tell everyone exactly what happened here. Sir, the civilian detention centers. Human marine units are already moving in. The guards won't resist. They just watch their entire fleet get neutered. Felnara was staring at the displays, her patterns cycling through colors Jake had never seen before. You won, she said. In 6 minutes. You actually won. We avoided maximum casualties, Jake corrected. That's not the same thing as winning. What do you mean? Jake pointed to another screen, where dozens of new contacts were appearing at the edge of the system. Not human, not Calroth. Hegemony dreadnoughts, Vryn carrier groups. 12 other species, all converging on Epsilon. Now, Jake said quietly, the real war starts. The Galactic Hegemony didn't send ambassadors. They sent Marshal Cross himself, arriving in a dreadnought the size of a small city. His message was brief. All parties would meet in neutral space, or Epsilon would be sterilized to prevent further escalation. Jake had 40 minutes to make a decision that would define humanity's next century. He stood in the command center, now revealed to be a full military fortress buried under 2 kilometers of rock. Around him, holographic displays showed the gathering fleet, over 300 warships from 9 different species, all holding position just outside the system's defensive perimeter. They're here to watch us fold, Sarah said, reading diplomatic traffic. The betting pools on the council networks are running 10-1 that we hand over Epsilon and apologize. Jake studied the formation patterns. The hegemony ships were positioned aggressively. The Vryn were hanging back, sensors active. The others were scattered, uncertain. They're not unified, he observed. Look at the spacing. Half of them are here because Cross told them to show up, but they're not committed to an actual fight. That doesn't change the math, Sarah said. We've got 100 platforms and maybe 15 actual warships in jump range. They have overwhelming force. Jake pulled up a secondary display, casualty reports from the Calroth engagement. Minimal on both sides. The colonist rescue operations were proceeding smoothly. 3,000 civilians already evacuated to safe zones. Felnara, still under guard but now unrestrained, approached. Her patterns had settled into something Jake was learning to read as reluctant respect. Commander, I've been authorized to speak for the sovereignty. We're prepared to negotiate. Your fleet tried to kill us 6 hours ago, and you defeated us without destroying a single ship. That restraint was noticed. She hesitated. It was also feared. No one realizes humans could coordinate that level of precision until they see it. What's your point? Marshal Cross isn't here to mediate. He's here to eliminate a threat before it grows larger. If you go to that meeting, they'll demand you decommission the platforms, hand over your fleet deployment data, and accept hegemony peacekeepers in human space. And if I refuse, they'll declare humanity a rogue state and authorize a response. Sarah swore quietly. We can't fight 300 ships. We don't have to fight them all, Jake said. He was staring at the formation patterns, mind racing through scenarios. We just have to make them fight each other. Both women looked at him like he'd lost his mind. Jake pulled up the diplomatic archives, decades of trade disputes, border conflicts, and unresolved grievances between council species. The galaxy wasn't a unified bloc. It was a collection of competing powers held together by bureaucracy and mutual exhaustion. The hegemony and the Vryn nearly went to war 8 years ago over mining rights in the coreward expanse. The sovereignty and the hegemony have 3 active border disputes. Half these species hate each other, but they hate uncertainty more. So? Sarah asked. So we give them certainty, just not the kind they're expecting. He opened a channel to the human flagship the Endeavor, which had just completed its jump into the system. Captain Marcus Hall appeared on the screen, a veteran of the first contact skirmishes, gray-haired and calm under pressure. Marcus, I need you to do something that's going to sound insane. It's Wednesday, Jake. Try me. Broadcast full specifications of the platform network. Deployment timelines, weapons capabilities, command protocols. Everything. You want to tell them how we beat them? I want to show them we're not hiding anything. Transparency is a weapon they're not expecting. They'll reverse engineer our tactics. Only if they work together, and they won't. Each species will hoard the data and try to develop counters independently. That'll take years. Jake leaned forward. But more importantly, it shows we're not playing the usual game. We're not hiding behind military secrecy. We're saying, here's what we can do. Here's why you shouldn't make us do it again. Hall considered this. The brass is going to love this plan right up until they court-martial you. Probably. Are you in? Always. One condition. I get to be in the room when you pitch this to Cross. Deal. The meeting took place on a neutral platform, an ancient structure built by a long-dead civilization, maintained by the Council as ceremonial ground. Jake arrived with Sarah and a security detail. Across the negotiation chamber, Marshal Cross waited with representatives from a dozen species. Felnara was there too, standing with the Calroth delegation. Her patterns were carefully neutral. Cross didn't waste time. Commander Mitchell, humanity has demonstrated advanced weapons capabilities without Council oversight. The compact requires prior approval for siege-class armaments. You are in violation. Jake remained standing. Protocol said he should sit, but he wanted everyone to see his face clearly. We submitted the platform specifications to the Oversight Committee 14 months ago. The approval request is still pending review. A murmur ran through the chamber. Cross's scales rippled, irritation. Bureaucratic delays don't justify deployment. The compact allows provisional deployment pending approval if a member state can demonstrate imminent threat. The sovereignty's advance into Epsilon qualified. We documented everything. You manipulated the rules. We followed them, exactly. Jake pulled up the holographic display. The platform specifications appeared, rotating slowly. Every weapon system, every power requirement, every operational parameter, nothing hidden. This is our current defense network. It's designed for one purpose, protecting civilian populations from aggression. It's not mobile. It can't invade. It's a shield, not a sword. Felnara's patterns flickered. Surprise. She hadn't expected him to reveal everything. One of the Vryn representatives, a diplomat named Sharkey, clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. If this is defensive, why did you position them offensively around our blockade? Your blockade was holding our civilians hostage. We positioned them defensively around our people. Perspective matters. Cross slammed a massive fist on the table. Enough wordplay. You defeated a Kalroth battle group in minutes. That capability threatens the power balance. No, Jake said quietly. It restores it. For 40 years, humanity has watched council members conduct pacification operations, launch protective interventions, and claim historical rights over populations that don't want them. We watched because we were weak. Now we're not, and you're scared that someone might finally enforce the rules you all ignore. The chamber erupted. Half the delegations were shouting, the other half calculating. Jake let them argue for 30 seconds before continuing. Here's what happens next. Epsilon remains human territory. The sovereignty withdraws completely and returns all captives. In exchange, we won't file war crimes charges for the detention camp operations. Vex Thor, attending via hologram from his captured flagship, made a choking sound. War crimes. We were administering contested territory. Video footage appeared. Kalroth guards beating colonists, cramped detention cells, insufficient food and medical supplies. Timestamps, location data, everything documented by human intelligence assets embedded in the colonies. Contested territory doesn't excuse this, Jake said. The compact is clear. We have evidence, testimony, and jurisdiction. The sovereignty can withdraw quietly, or we can present this to the tribunal and let historians decide how it looks. Thelnara's patterns had gone very still. She was staring at the footage, her face unreadable. Cross leaned back. You're blackmailing a council member. I'm enforcing laws the council wrote and you all ignore. If that's blackmail, the compact is meaningless. And if we reject your terms, Jake met his eyes. Then we expand the platform network to every human colony. We share the technology with every species that asks. We turn defense manufacturing into humanity's primary export. Within 5 years, 20 species will have siege-class capabilities, and your monopoly on force ends. The threat hung in the air. Jake watched it sink in. The hegemony's power came from technological superiority. If humanity spread these weapons, the carefully maintained hierarchy would collapse. Smaller species would arm themselves. Border disputes would escalate. The entire council structure would destabilize. Shark spoke up. Commander Mitchell, hypothetically, if the council were to revisit certain territorial disputes through proper arbitration channels, would humanity restrict platform distribution? Jake suppressed a smile. The Vryn were infamous for their border conflicts with the hegemony. They saw an opportunity. Humanity believes in the compact. If the compact works as intended, we have no reason to arm anyone. Meaning? Cross demanded. Meaning we want the rules to matter. If the council becomes a place where law means something, instead of whoever has the biggest fleet, we'll work within that system. And if not, then we'll build a different system. One where small colonies don't get conquered just because ancient empires feel expansionist. Marshal Cross stood. His full height was impressive. Nearly 3 meters of scaled muscle and controlled aggression. But Jake didn't step back. You're playing a dangerous game, human. I'm playing the only game that matters, survival, and we're done playing it alone. Cross stared at him for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, his jaw plates spread, the reptilian equivalent of a grin. I misjudged your species. That won't happen again. I'm counting on it. The meeting broke up with no formal resolution, which meant both sides could claim they hadn't backed down. But, as the delegations filed out, Jake noticed something crucial. The Vryn delegation approached the human team, requesting private talks. 2 other species followed. The monolithic coalition was already fracturing. Sarah waited until they were alone in the shuttle before speaking. Sir, did we just start a galactic arms race? Jake stared out at the stars. No, we just ended a galactic dictatorship. What comes next is up to them. Behind them on the station, Felnara stood alone in the observation deck. Her patterns cycled slowly through colors of confusion, respect, and something that might have been fear. She'd watched humanity reveal its hand completely, and realized the galaxy had no idea what game they were really playing. In 72 hours, the rules had changed. No one knew where they'd land. The response came from the least expected source. 3 days after the Epsilon stand-down, a Vryn convoy attacked a human science vessel in the Outer Reach, a supposedly neutral zone where multiple species conducted research. The science ship, the Meridian, was obliterated with all hands. 237 people dead. The Vryn claimed it was a mistake. Their official statement said the Meridian had strayed into a classified military exercise zone and failed to respond to hails. Every piece of evidence said otherwise. Jake was in the strategy room on Earth when the data came through. The Meridian's final transmissions, recovered from a comm buoy, showed the Vryn ships changing course to intercept. Multiple hails sent and ignored. Deliberate targeting of the drive section to prevent escape. It wasn't a mistake. It was a message. "They're testing us," Admiral Catherine Brooks said. She commanded Earth's home fleet. 16 ships that had never left the solar system. They want to see if we'll back down when it's not about colonies, when it's just a research vessel that wandered too far. Jake studied the tactical projections. The Vryn held significant territory along humanity's expansion corridor. Their military was formidable, insectoid warriors with hive mind coordination and a cultural disdain for mammalian species. "Why now?" Sarah asked. "We just diffused the Epsilon crisis. Why provoke us?" "Because we made them look weak," Jake said quietly. "They came to Epsilon expecting to watch us fold. Instead, we showed everyone that the old rules don't work anymore. The Vryn are traditionalists. They need to reassert dominance. Or, Admiral Brooks said, they're working for someone else. The hegemony wants plausible deniability for probing our response." Vryn diplomatic traffic had spiked in the days after Epsilon. Multiple encrypted channels between their homeworld and hegemony core systems. Nothing definitive, but suggestive. Either way, we have to respond. If we let this slide, every attack gets attributed to navigational errors and communication failures. "What are you thinking?" Brooks asked. Jake was already pulling up star charts. The Vryn maintained 3 major fleet bases along humanity's border. The central one, Station Apex, was their primary coordination hub, automated logistics, repair facilities, and the nerve center for regional operations. "We hit Apex, not the ships, the station. We show them we can reach their infrastructure whenever we want." Brooks inhaled sharply. "That's an act of war." The Meridian was an act of war. We're just responding in kind. "Jake, Station Apex is in Vryn sovereign space. Even with the platform network, we don't have the force projection to... We don't need force protection. We need infiltration." He pulled up another file. This one showed a schematic of Apex, massive, modular, built over decades. It housed 40,000 Vryn personnel and coordinated fleet movements across 6 sectors. "Infiltration?" Sarah said. "Sir, human operatives can't pass for Vryn. We're not even close to the same body type." "We don't need to pass. We need to plant a message where they can't ignore it." Jake had been thinking about this since the Epsilon confrontation. The platforms had been effective, but they were defensive assets. Humanity needed something offensive, not weapons, but capability demonstration. Something that said, "We can reach you anywhere." "There's a maintenance route," he said, highlighting a section of the schematic. "Supply shuttles cycle through every 16 hours. Automated scanning, minimal inspection. If we can slip a team aboard." "With what cover?" Brooks demanded. Vryn are meticulous about their logistics chains. Any unauthorized shuttle gets flagged immediately. Not if it's carrying legitimate cargo from a legitimate supplier. Jake pulled up shipping manifests. The Vrin outsourced certain supply contracts to neutral merchants, raw materials, food supplements, standard components. One supplier in particular, the Reshkar Consortium, had regular access to Apex. "We buy the consortium," Jake said, quietly, "use shell corporations, intermediaries, the whole intelligence playbook. Then we use their credentials to deliver a package." "That'll take months," Sarah protested. "We did it 3 months ago. I didn't want to tell anyone until we needed it." Both women stared at him. "You bought a galactic shipping consortium," Brooks said slowly, "when we were still negotiating with the Kalroth. I bought controlling interest in 6 corporations. The consortium was one. I was preparing for multiple contingencies." Sarah laughed. A short, disbelieving sound. "Sir, how far ahead are you planning?" "Far enough that I'm already thinking about what happens after Apex." The operation was designated Silent Proof. A team of 12, special operations personnel trained for zero-gravity infiltration. Their leader was Major Lisa Grant, a veteran of counter-piracy operations with a reputation for improvisation. Jake briefed them personally in a secure facility on Mars. "You're not destroying Apex," he said. "You're proving we can. Plant the device in the station's primary data nexus. It's a transmitter, not a bomb. When activated, it'll broadcast a message to every terminal in the station simultaneously." "What message?" Grant asked. "We could have done worse. Along with footage of your insertion, movement through their systems, and extraction. Complete documentation that we penetrated their most secure facility." "That's going to start a war," one of the team members said. "The war already started when they killed the Meridian crew. We're just changing the terms." Grant studied the schematics. "Entry via supply shuttle. That gets us to the docking ring, but security between there and the data nexus is heavy. Biometric scans, patrol patterns, sensor grids. Which is why you're bringing this." Jake placed a small device on the briefing table. It looked like a standard data storage unit, but when activated, it emitted a field that disrupted Vrin sensory organs. Not harmful, but disorienting. "Vrin coordination depends on pheromone communication," Jake explained. "This scrambles their scent receptors. In high concentrations, it'll cause temporary confusion. Use it when you need to bypass checkpoints." "Temporary?" Grant asked. "How temporary?" 30 seconds to 2 minutes. Don't linger." The team spent a week rehearsing on a mock-up built from intelligence photos. Every corridor memorized, every timing window calculated. They ran the scenario 40 times until they could move through it blindfolded. On the 41st run, Jake joined them. "Sir," Grant said, surprised, "I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not," Admiral Brooks said, appearing via secure channel. "You're the face of human diplomacy right now. If you're captured, then the Vrin will have committed an act of war against a council representative. They'll have violated the same compact they claim to uphold. Either way, we win the narrative. Or you get killed, and we lose the war. Catherine, I'm not asking permission. I'm informing you. You know, this is insane. That's why it'll work. They're expecting military operations, professional soldiers following protocols. They're not expecting a commander to personally walk into their stronghold. And if something goes wrong, then you already have contingency orders. Sarah knows the plans. The platforms are automated. Humanity doesn't need me to win this." Brooks didn't look convinced, but she knew better than to argue. "Fine. But you're wearing a tracker. If this goes sideways, we're pulling you out, even if it means revealing additional assets." "Understood." 3 days later, a Reshkar Consortium shuttle undocked from a civilian freighter and began its routine approach to Station Apex. It carried standard supplies, nutrient packs, replacement components, sealed cargo containers marked with proper certification. Inside one of those containers, Jake Mitchell and 12 special operators breathed carefully regulated air and reviewed the mission timeline one final time. 5 minutes to docking, Grant whispered through the secure comm. Everyone clear on the route? Acknowledgements came back in text. Sound discipline was absolute. Jake felt the shuttle decelerate, heard the magnetic clamps engage. The docking procedure was automated. Vrin efficiency prioritized minimal personnel interaction for routine supply runs. Outside, station scanners probed the shuttle. Standard procedure. They detected the expected cargo, the expected power signatures, nothing out of place. What they didn't detect was the molecular shielding woven into the containers, a technology humanity had developed from studying hegemony stealth materials. It diffused thermal scans, scattered active sensors, and made biological signatures read as cargo. The scanner passed. The all-clear tone sounded. The containers were loaded onto automated carts and wheeled into the station's storage bay. According to schedule, they'd sit there for 6 hours before being processed and distributed. They didn't have 6 hours. Grant's countdown appeared on Jake's helmet display. 3 minutes until the storage bay cycle completed and locked down. After that, they'd be trapped until the next shift change. 8 hours they didn't have. At the 90-second mark, Grant triggered the first container release. The seals disengaged silently, and the team emerged into the dim storage bay. Vrin preferred low light. Their compound eyes functioned better in near darkness, which gave humanity an advantage. Jake's helmet vision switched to enhanced mode, painting the bay in clear thermal signatures. 6 Vrin workers, all focused on their tasks. Standard procedure: log the delivery, verify inventory, move containers to designated zones. The team moved like ghosts. Years of training, millions of dollars in equipment, all focused on one goal: reach the data nexus without triggering alarms. They made it past the storage bay, through a maintenance corridor that human intelligence had identified 3 months earlier. Past 2 automated checkpoints using spoofed credentials from the consortium purchase. Then they hit the first patrol. 3 Vrin guards, walking a standard route. Heavily armed, senses alert. The team froze, pressed against the corridor walls. Grant's hand signal: use the disruptor. Jake triggered the device. A pulse of carefully calibrated chemicals dispersed through the ventilation system. Vrin antennae twitched. One guard stopped, mandibles clicking in confusion. The pheromone channels they used for coordination were suddenly filled with noise. 30 seconds of confusion. The team moved past them, silent and fast. By the time the Vrin guard's senses cleared, the humans were 3 corridors away. Data nexus ahead, Grant whispered. 2 minutes. They reached the access point, a maintenance hatch that fed into the station's central computer core. According to schematics, it was unguarded. Automated systems monitored access, but physical security was minimal. The Vrin had never imagined someone would physically infiltrate this deep. Jake dropped through the hatch first. The Nexus chamber was massive, server towers stretching 3 stories high, cooling systems humming, data streams flowing through fiber optic channels at speeds that made Earth's best systems look primitive. And in the center, the access terminal. Jake moved to it, fingers flying across the interface. Vrin coding architecture was different from human systems, but not incomprehensible. He'd studied it for months, preparing for this moment. The transmitter planted, the message loaded, the broadcast protocol armed. Package delivered, Jake said quietly. 30 seconds to extraction. That's when the alarms started screaming. Not proximity alarms, not motion sensors, something else. A security protocol they hadn't anticipated. Grant swore. They're sealing the compartment. We've got maybe 20 seconds before. The hatch they'd entered through slammed shut. Magnetic locks engaged, with a sound like breaking bones. Alternate route, Jake said. already moving. Service Tunnel, Section 9. Move! The team sprinted through the server towers. Behind them, they could hear Vrin's security forces mobilizing. The rapid clicking of mandibles, the hiss of weapons charging. The service tunnel entrance was supposed to be here. According to schematics, according to intelligence reports, according to every piece of data they had, it wasn't there. They renovated, one of the operators said, voice tight with controlled panic. This section was upgraded. The tunnel's been sealed. Jake's mind raced. They had one exit blocked, one route that didn't exist, and approximately 90 seconds before Vrin's security breached the data nexus. There, he said, pointing to a coolant exchange vent. It feeds into the station's environmental system. We can use it to reach the docking ring. Sir, that's a 300-meter crawl through sub-zero temperatures. Then we crawl fast. Grant, blow the vent. She placed a shaped charge, small, precise, designed not to cause catastrophic damage, but to breach barriers. The explosion was muffled by the server noise, but effective. The vent opening appeared, frost billowing out from the temperature differential. Go, go, go! The team dove into the vent system. The cold hit like a physical blow, -40°C, designed to keep the servers from overheating. Jake's suit compensated, but he could feel the temperature dropping. Behind them, Vrin's security burst into the data nexus. Weapons fire stitched through the server towers, but the humans were already gone. The crawl was nightmare fuel. Tight spaces, freezing temperatures, and the constant awareness that Vrin forces were tracking them through the station's sensor grid. Every few meters, Jake could hear them above, boots on metal, commands being shouted in the clicking Vrin language. Station exit, 60 meters, Grant said. Her voice was strained. The cold was affecting everyone. 50 meters, 40, 30. A grade ahead, the one that led to the docking ring. Freedom measured in meters. Grant reached it first, placed another charge. Fire in 3. Wait, Jake said. Listen. On the other side of the grate, voices. Vrin's security, waiting at the docking ring. They'd predicted the escape route. We're trapped, someone whispered. Jake looked at his wrist display. The message device in the data nexus. It was armed, ready to broadcast. All it needed was activation. He had a choice. Trigger it now and create a distraction, or save it for later and hope they found another exit. If he triggered it now, the Vrin would know they'd been infiltrated. The message would broadcast. The evidence would spread. But the team would be exposed. If he waited, they might all die here. Jake made the decision. Activate the device. Full broadcast, now. He triggered the remote command. In the data nexus, the transmitter came alive. Every terminal in Station Apex received the message simultaneously. Text, video, complete documentation of the infiltration. The footage showed human operators moving through secured areas. Timestamps proved they'd been inside for 37 minutes. The message was simple. We were here. We could have done worse. The Meridian crew deserved better. So do you. Choose peace. The reaction was immediate. Alarms changed tone. Security protocols shifted from apprehend intruders to contain information breach. Vrin personnel rushed to their terminals, trying to understand how their most secure facility had been compromised, including the guards waiting at the docking ring. They're moving, Grant whispered, watching through the grate. Running back toward the Nexus. We've got maybe 30 seconds. Then we use them. Jake blew the grate. The team dropped into the docking ring, weapons ready, but the corridor was clear. The distraction had worked. Their extraction shuttle was 3 docks away. They could see it through the viewports. A civilian courier, registered to a human trading company, completely legitimate. 20 meters to freedom. They made it 15 meters before the Vrin reinforcements arrived. A full security squad, weapons raised, blocking the path to the shuttle. Their squad leader, a massive Vryn with scarred carapace, stepped forward. "Humans," he said, in heavily accented standard, "you are captured. Surrender weapons or be terminated." Jake raised his hand slowly. Behind him, the team did the same. They were outnumbered 5-1, in a hostile station, surrounded by an entire fleet. Every tactical consideration said they'd lost. Jake smiled. "Check your communications," he said calmly. "The message went out 8 minutes ago. By now, every council member has seen the footage. Every news network is broadcasting it. Every species knows that humans penetrated your most secure station and left a message instead of a bomb." The Vryn squad leader's antennae twitched. "Uncertainty. You're declaring war," he said. "No, we're declaring accountability. You killed 237 of our people and called it an accident. We infiltrated your base and left everyone alive. Now, the galaxy decides who the real threat is." Jake pulled out a data crystal, identical to the one he'd shown the council weeks earlier. "This contains the full evidence of the Meridian attack. Sensor logs, communication intercepts, trajectory analysis. Everything that proves it wasn't an accident. We're filing formal charges with the council tribunal. You can kill us here, which proves you have something to hide. Or you can let us leave, which proves you're willing to face justice." "You're bluffing," the squad leader said. "Am I? Check your orders. I bet they're changing right now." The Vryn's communication implant blinked. Incoming priority message. He held up one claw for silence, listened to whatever his superiors were saying. His mandibles clicked in what might have been frustration. "You are ordered released," he said finally, "under diplomatic immunity protocols. But, Commander Mitchell, you have made an enemy today. I made an enemy when you killed my people. I'm just making sure everyone knows it." The Vryn stepped aside. The path to the shuttle cleared. Jake and his team walked past them, weapons still holstered, moving with the calm confidence of people who knew they'd already won the part that mattered. Inside the shuttle, as they undocked and accelerated away from Apex, Grant let out a breath she'd been holding for what felt like hours. "Sir, that was the most insane thing I've ever been part of." "It worked, didn't it? We almost died 6 different ways. Almost doesn't count in war." Sarah's voice came through the secure channel from Earth. "Jake, you're trending across every network in the galaxy. The footage is everywhere. The Vryn are scrambling to contain it, but it's too late. Public opinion is shifting." Jake watched Station Apex shrink in the view screen. Behind them, the Vryn fleet remained in position. Powerful, dangerous, but suddenly uncertain. "What's the council saying?" he asked. "Emergency session called for tomorrow. The Vryn are demanding sanctions against humanity for violating their sovereignty. We're demanding tribunal proceedings for the Meridian killings. It's going to be a mess." "Good," Jake said. "Messy means everyone's paying attention. Clean would mean someone already decided the outcome." Grant was checking her suit systems, decompressing after the mission. "Sir, permission to speak freely?" "Always. You knew we'd get caught, didn't you? The whole operation was designed to get us caught after we delivered the message." Jake didn't answer immediately. Outside, stars streamed past as the shuttle jumped to FTL. "I knew it was possible," he said finally. "The infiltration needed to be real. Genuine penetration of their security. But the message needed to be public. If we'd escaped clean, they could have covered it up. This way, the evidence spread before they could contain it. You used us as bait. I used us as proof. There's a difference." Grant considered this. "And if they'd killed us instead of letting us go, then they'd have proven they had something to hide. Either way, humanity wins the narrative." "That's cold, sir." "That's command. I make calls that risk lives, mine included, to save more lives down the line. If you want warmth, join the diplomatic corps." But Grant was smiling. "Respectfully, sir, I think you're exactly where you need to be. The shuttle continued toward human space. Behind them, Station Apex descended into chaos. And across the galaxy, trillions of beings watched the footage and asked themselves the same question. If humanity could do this to the Vryn, what could they do to us? The answer would define everything that came next. The tribunal convened on Nexus Prime, the same station where Jake had delivered humanity's first warning 3 weeks earlier. Now, he stood in the formal court chamber, watching as representatives from 47 species took their positions. The proceedings were broadcast across every network, billions watching. Everyone wanted to see how this played out. On one side, the Vryn delegation, led by Matriarch Shark herself. On the other, humanity, represented by Jake and a team of legal experts who'd spent 72 hours preparing evidence. In the center, presiding Arbiter Shard, the crystalline being whose role was to interpret compact law without bias. Marshal Cross of the Hegemony sat in the observer section, along with Felnara of the Kalroth, and representatives from every major power. It was a referendum on humanity's place in galactic politics. Shard's voice resonated through the chamber, crystalline harmonics that translators rendered as formal, precise language. These proceedings address 2 charges. First, the Vryn sovereignty's alleged unlawful destruction of the human vessel Meridian. Second, humanity's alleged violation of Vryn sovereignty through military infiltration of Station Apex. Jake stood. The charges are connected, Arbiter. Our actions at Apex were direct response to the Meridian attack. Context matters. Context will be considered, Shard acknowledged. Present your evidence. The holographic display lit up. Footage from the Meridian's final moments played for everyone to see. The science ship, conducting standard survey operations in the outer reach. Vryn warships, changing course to intercept. Hail sent, 17 of them, all acknowledged but ignored. The final transmission. Unknown vessels are pursuing. We are unarmed. Requesting assistance. This is a civilian research. The message cut off as particle beams tore through the Meridian's hull. Secondary explosions followed. Escape pods launched, 6 of them, carrying 23 survivors. The footage continued. The Vryn ships targeting the escape pods, methodical, precise, ensuring no witnesses. The chamber was silent. Jake let the evidence speak for itself. When the footage ended, he said simply, the Meridian posed no threat, transmitted proper identification, complied with navigational protocols. The Vryn destroyed it anyway, then eliminated survivors to hide evidence. Matriarch Shark rose. Her carapace gleamed under the chamber lights, and her voice carried the clicking authority of someone who'd commanded fleets for decades. The footage is authentic, but incomplete. It does not show the Meridian's earlier actions, unauthorized scans of Vryn military installations, deviation from approved flight paths, potential intelligence gathering. Do you have evidence of these claims? Shard asked. We have sensor logs that show, which you've had 3 weeks to fabricate, Jake interrupted, while our footage comes from an independent convoy that automatically uploaded to neutral servers. Time-stamped, encrypted, unalterable. Shark's mandibles clicked in irritation. You speak of evidence while ignoring your own crimes. Humanity infiltrated our sovereign station, violated our security, and broadcast propaganda across our networks. We proved you were lying, Jake corrected. About the Meridian, about your security, about your ability to act with impunity. You committed an act of war. No, we committed an act of documentation. We showed the galaxy what you tried to hide. If Station Apex's security was so robust, how did 12 humans penetrate it? If your claims about the Meridian were true, why panic when we demanded investigation? The chamber erupted in voices, species arguing, delegations conferring, the careful politics of the council colliding with uncomfortable facts. Shard raised one crystalline limb. Silence fell instantly. Matriarch Sharkok, does the Vryn sovereignty have evidence that the Meridian was engaged in intelligence operations? The pause was telling. Shark's antennae twitched, the Vryn equivalent of nervous calculation. We have testimony from the commanding officers of the vessels involved. The same officers who destroyed a civilian ship and its escape pods, Jake said flatly. You're asking the tribunal to trust the word of people who committed the crime. And you ask us to trust humans who violated sovereign territory. We violated territory to gather evidence of a crime you refuse to acknowledge. That's called investigation, not war. Marshal Cross stood. The massive reptilian's presence drew every eye. If I may, Arbiter, this debate misses the larger issue. Humanity has demonstrated capabilities that threaten the balance of power. The Epsilon platforms, the Apex infiltration. What's next? Should we expect human operatives in every council member's infrastructure? Jake turned to face him. Marshal, with respect, you're afraid of accountability, not humanity. For centuries, powerful species have operated without oversight. You enforce rules on small colonies while ignoring them yourselves. Humanity isn't threatening the balance of power. We're demanding that the power be balanced. By threatening everyone who disagrees with you? By proving we can respond when wronged. The Meridian was murdered. 237 people. If we'd filed a complaint and waited for the council to investigate, what would have happened? Cross didn't answer. I'll tell you, Jake continued. It would have gone to committee, been studied, been delayed, eventually been ruled inconclusive or regrettable but justified, because the Vryn have votes and influence, and humanity is still the new species trying to find its place. He looked around the chamber, meeting eyes with representatives from species both powerful and weak. How many of you have filed complaints that disappeared into bureaucracy? How many have watched stronger neighbors take liberties because you didn't have the power to stop them? The compact promises justice. The council promises protection. But it only works if someone enforces it. Humanity is volunteering. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some species looked thoughtful. Others looked alarmed. The weak ones, the colonies and minor powers who'd spent decades being pushed around, looked hopeful. Felnara stood. Her Kalroth patterns were carefully neutral, but her voice carried weight. Arbiter, I was present at the Epsilon confrontation. I witnessed humanity's restraint. They defeated our blockade without destroying a single ship. They could have killed thousands. They chose not to. That restraint matters. As does their aggression, Sharkok countered. They armed themselves in secret, deployed siege weapons without approval, infiltrated our facilities. Where does it end? When you stop giving us reasons to act, Jake said quietly. We don't want an empire. We don't want territory. We want to be left alone, to grow, explore, and live, without fear that a stronger power will crush us, because they can. Pretty words, Cross rumbled. But power corrupts. Today you defend your civilians. Tomorrow you'll use those platforms to threaten others. Maybe we'll use them to defend those who can't defend themselves. Maybe humanity becomes the enforcement arm the Compact always needed. Either way, the galaxy is changing. You can adapt to it or fight it, but you can't stop it. Shard's harmonics shifted, the crystalline equivalent of contemplation. Commander Mitchell, humanity's infiltration of Station Apex was illegal under Compact law. However, your evidence regarding the Meridian is compelling. The tribunal must weigh both violations. Then weigh this, Jake said. He pulled out another data crystal. We've recovered the Meridian's black box, retrieved from the wreckage by a salvage team last week. It contains the complete sensor logs, crew communications, and system data from the attack. He uploaded the data to the tribunal's display. New footage appeared. Internal perspectives from the Meridian. Crew members at their stations, calm and professional. The science director explaining their survey findings. A researcher showing her kids pictures from the observation deck. Human faces, human lives, real people, not abstract casualties. Then, the attack. Confusion, fear, the captain trying to surrender, the crew scrambling for escape pods, the final moments as Vryn weapons tore through the ship. When it ended, Jake spoke into the silence. The Vryn destroyed the Meridian because it discovered something. We found it in the salvage, evidence of unauthorized Vryn military installations in neutral zones. The science team was going to report it. They were killed to silence them. Shark's carapace plates rippled. Vryn body language for denial, but her voice betrayed uncertainty. This is fabrication. The installations are still there, Jake interrupted. Coordinates included in the evidence file. Any council member can verify. The Vryn have been violating the compact for years, and the Meridian crew died for discovering it. The chamber exploded. Every delegation talking at once, the weak species demanding investigation. The powerful ones calculating how this shifted the political landscape. Shard raised both limbs, and the cacophony cut off. Matriarch Shar King, does the Vryn sovereignty wish to respond to these allegations? The matriarch stood frozen. Her mandibles worked soundlessly. Jake could see the calculation happening. Admit the installations and face sanctions, or deny everything and be proven liars when the council verified the coordinates. Finally, she spoke. The installations were defensive, established during a border dispute with the hegemony 20 years ago. We had authorization from the regional governor. The regional governor has no authority to override compact treaty, Shard said. Neutral zones require council approval for military presence. Then we request retroactive approval, which you'll receive because you have allies who'll vote with you, while the Meridian crew stays dead and justice becomes optional. He turned to address the entire chamber. This is what humanity opposes. Not the Vryn specifically, not any one species, but the idea that power means immunity, that influence means justice doesn't apply. We're not perfect, no species is, but we're willing to enforce rules fairly, even when it costs us, even when it makes us enemies. And if others don't want your enforcement, Cross demanded, then they should start enforcing the rules themselves. Show us that the compact means something more than politics and compromise. Prove that justice works without someone forcing the issue. Jake looked directly at Shard. We're willing to accept punishment for the Apex infiltration. We broke the law, deliberately, to expose a greater crime. We'll face consequences, but the Vryn must face consequences too. Otherwise, you're proving that the compact only punishes the weak. The chamber fell silent. Every species waiting to see what the arbiter would decide. Shard's crystalline form refracted light in patterns that suggested deep consideration. The tribunal will recess to deliberate. Ruling will be announced in 6 hours. As the chamber emptied, Jake remained standing at his podium. Around him, delegations filed out, some avoiding eye contact, others studying him with new wariness. Felnara approached. Her patterns were subdued. You've made this personal, she said quietly. Cross, Shark, half the council. They'll never forgive this. Good, Jake said. Fear breeds caution. Caution prevents stupidity. If they're afraid of human retaliation, maybe they'll think twice before attacking our civilians. Or they'll unite against you. We're not the scared newcomers anymore. Felnara's patterns shifted to something that might have been respect. You're gambling humanity's future on this moment. What if you lose? Jake looked out at the stars beyond the station viewports. Then we lose fighting for what's right. That's better than winning by doing nothing. She stood beside him in silence for a moment. Then, for what it's worth, Commander, Epsilon colonists are safely resettled. The sovereignty withdrew completely. Your platforms remained non-aggressive throughout. It's being noticed. By who? The species who matter. The ones who want the rules to mean something. She left him there, alone with his thoughts and the weight of what came next. 6 hours until the ruling. 6 hours until the galaxy learned whether law or power would define its future. Jake used the time to write letters to the families of the Meridian crew. 237 letters. He owed them that much. When the tribunal reconvened, Shard's pronouncement carried across every network. The Vryn sovereignty is found guilty of unlawful destruction of a civilian vessel. Penalties include reparations, formal apology, and mandatory withdrawal from disputed territories pending investigation. Humanity is found guilty of sovereignty violation, but is granted exception under Compact Article 12, necessary action to document war crimes. No penalties assigned. The gallery erupted. Sharkhawk stood in shock. Cross looked grimly satisfied. The ruling set precedents he'd likely use later. Jake felt nothing. Not victory, not relief. Just the knowledge that 237 people were still dead, and all he'd done was make their deaths mean something. Outside the chamber, Sarah was waiting. "Sir, you did it. The tribunal sided with us." "They sided with evidence. That's not the same thing." "Still counts as a win." "We'll see. Check with our observers. I want to know how the hegemony votes shift in the next week." Cross looked too pleased with this outcome. "You think he's planning something?" "I think everyone's planning something. The question is whether we'll see it coming." They walked toward the docking bay where the human shuttle waited. Behind them, the tribunal continued its session, already moving to the next crisis, the next dispute, the machinery of galactic politics grinding forward. But something had changed. A precedent set. A line drawn. Humanity had proven it could fight, and more importantly, that it would fight for principles, not just power. What came next would define whether that was wisdom or folly. 3 months later, Jake stood in the memorial garden on Earth, surrounded by 237 names carved into black stone. The Meridian Memorial, dedicated to those who died exploring, not fighting. Families were there, some crying, some just standing in silence. Jake had met with each one personally, and the weight of those conversations would stay with him forever. A shadow fell across the memorial. Jake turned to find Marshal Cross standing there, alone, his massive frame somehow seeming less intimidating in Earth's gravity. "Marshal, didn't expect to see you here." "I'm visiting your planet for treaty negotiations. I thought I should see what humanity values enough to risk war over." Cross looked at the names. His reptilian eyes were difficult to read, but his voice carried something that might have been respect. "You won at the tribunal. Politically, strategically, morally, most species would be celebrating. 237 people are dead. Where's the victory in that? In ensuring their deaths mattered. In preventing future deaths. You've changed the Council, Commander, not through force, through accountability. At what cost?" Cross turned to face him. "Do you know why I opposed you at Epsilon, at the tribunal? Because humanity threatened the power structure you've spent decades maintaining. Partly. But also because I've lived through 3 major wars. I've watched civilizations burn when the balance shifts too quickly. I feared you were pushing us toward another conflagration. And now I think you might be preventing one. The compact needs enforcement. It's needed it for centuries. No one wanted to volunteer, because enforcement makes enemies. Humanity volunteered anyway. These people died, because the Vryn thought they could kill with impunity. Your response taught them otherwise. And the galaxy watched. Smaller species are filing complaints they'd have buried before. Powerful species are checking themselves before overreaching. It's messy, political, and fragile, but it's better than the alternative. Which was? Slow decay into irrelevance, followed by someone, probably the hegemony, deciding to enforce order through conquest. Your way is chaotic. Mine would have been stable. But stability without justice is just tyranny waiting to happen. Jake studied the massive reptilian. You came all this way to tell me you were wrong? No, I came to tell you I'm watching. Humanity has power now. Earned it fairly, I'll admit. But power changes people. Today you defend civilians. Tomorrow you might decide your definitions of justice should be universal. When that happens, we'll have a problem. I'm offering advice. Keep your principles. Stay accountable. The moment you become what you oppose, I'll be there to stop you. Not because I hate humanity, but because the galaxy needs someone willing to check power, even their own. Cross extended one massive claw. Jake shook it, a human gesture, but one the Marshal had learned. You're invited to our treaty signing tomorrow, Cross said. We're establishing a joint enforcement initiative. Multiple species contributing ships and personnel to investigate compact violations. Humanity will have command rotation. Why? Because you proved you can be trusted with authority. For now. Don't make me regret it. The Marshal left, his footsteps heavy on the garden path. Sarah approached from the other direction, holding a datapad. Sir, you're not going to believe this. We've got 47 formal requests from different species asking for security consultations. They want to know if we can help them build defense networks like Epsilon. What did you tell them? That you'd review each request personally. But sir, if we accept even half of these, humanity becomes the galaxy's primary defense contractor. That's a lot of influence. Jake looked at the names on the memorial again. All those people. Gone because someone with power decided they didn't matter. We accept all of them, he said. But with conditions. We train their personnel. We share technology. We build their capacity to defend themselves. We don't create dependencies. That'll cost us leverage. Good. We're not building an empire. We're building partnerships. Sarah smiled. You really believe that, don't you? That we can have power without corrupting ourselves. Otherwise, everything the Meridian crew died for becomes meaningless. He took one last look at the memorial, then turned toward the transport that would take him to the treaty signing. Behind him, the names remained, carved in stone, permanent reminders of what happened when power went unchecked. Ahead of him, the galaxy waited, vast, dangerous, and full of species learning a new reality. Humanity had arrived, not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as the species willing to enforce justice even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. That evening, in a secure communication room, Jake received a final message. It was from Felnara, back on her Calroth homeworld. Commander Mitchell, the Sovereignty is formally apologizing to the Epsilon colonists. Reparations are being paid. Our military is undergoing reforms. It's slow, political, and half-hearted, but it's happening. You were right at the tribunal. We needed someone to force accountability. I hated you for it at first. Now I'm grateful. But I'm also terrified. Humanity has demonstrated restraint so far. What happens when your leaders change? When someone less principled holds the power you've built? I don't expect an answer. Just know that the galaxy is watching. Some with hope, some with fear. All with the knowledge that you've changed everything. Choose your successors wisely. Jake archived the message. She was right to worry. Power could corrupt even the best intentions. The systems he'd built, the precedents he'd set, they'd outlive him. Would they stay true to their purpose, or become tools of oppression? He didn't know. No one could. But he trained Sarah, promoted officers who valued principles over victories, built institutions designed to check themselves. It would have to be enough. Outside the window, Earth rotated peacefully beneath the stars. Beyond it, the galaxy, vast, complex, and now forced to reckon with the fact that humanity would no longer be ignored. Jake Mitchell had been called weak, been mocked, been dismissed as a minor player in galactic politics. He'd responded by changing the rules entirely. History would decide if it was worth it. But tonight, in the quiet of his office, surrounded by the weight of command and the memories of 237 names, Jake allowed himself a single moment of satisfaction. They'd been warned, the galaxy had laughed, and humanity had proven that warnings backed by action could reshape the stars. The story wasn't over, but it was beginning on humanity's terms. And that made all the difference. If you've made it this far in the story, I want to say thank you. Here at HFY Core, we pour our hearts into bringing you these intense space war narratives. If this story got your adrenaline pumping, hit that comment button below and let me know what you thought. Was Jake's gamble worth it? Should humanity have pushed even harder? Share your thoughts, and don't forget to pass this along to a friend who loves military sci-fi. Your support means everything. Until next time, stay strong, stay human, and remember, in the vastness of space, sometimes the smallest species makes the biggest impact.